but I was not like liking it all. I was on construction sites, just eating dust. It's like, what the hell am I doing with my life? This is not what I left the Netherlands for, but I had that financial pressure. So I was kind of forced to be there. The feeling forced to be somewhere where I didn't want to be got me into, feeling anxious, feeling depressed. I started getting panic attacks. I started to cry at job sites. And I got into this very downward spiral of negative thinking about myself, of how I got myself into that place. That led to me losing friends and taking distance from friends because we weren't on the same levels anymore. They were loving life, going out like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I wasn't feeling like that at all. I was just miserable. So I started to kind of get isolated, and I started not going to jobs anymore because I just couldn't do it. Like, I didn't want to walk away from job sites. I didn't want to stand there crying like a fully adult. So I started to walk away, which led to not having an income, which led to me losing the house I was living at. So all of a sudden, I had to move back to a 6-bed dorm in a hostel because that was all I could afford.
Hello, beautiful people. On today's podcast, we have the powerful and vulnerable Anton Nootenboom. Anton is from the Netherlands, where he spent 10 years serving in the Dutch army, including 3 missions to Afghanistan, and more recently moved to Australia, where he spent 5 years working in construction, these being highly masculine environments where he witnessed firsthand men's mental health challenges. In 2019, Anton became the first person to walk to Mount Everest Base Camp barefoot, successfully raising funds and awareness for remote communities and wildlife of the Himalayas. And in 2021, set a second world record, walking 3,019 kilometers barefoot from Cairns to Sydney, raising funds and awareness for men's mental health, including Gotcha for Life, whose Gus Wallen has been on the podcast number 21. What I personally love about this conversation is Anton's powerful openness. There is so much freedom in being able to be who you are and share your story to the raw detail that Anton does. Anton shares about his experience with anxiety, depression, and panic attacks that led him to walking the shores of the northern beaches for up to 9 hours a day, hurting with a lack of direction. He shares how walking barefoot to Mount Everest Base Camp sparked his purpose and mission by realizing it was as simple as using his 2 bare feet to make a difference for someone else. He shares of the both grueling and rewarding experience of walking 3,019 kilometers barefoot in 163 days, the impact that it made in the communities that he touched, and we get pretty raw and real in speaking about how he felt miserable after such an achievement when he came home after 5.5 months to an empty apartment and the loss of a relationship. And this is precisely why I respect Anton so much. He leans in fully to the experience of being human without shame, which supports his fundamental message that showing emotion is not weakness. Please enjoy this important conversation with the beautiful Anton. Welcome, Anton.
Thank you very much.
I'm excited for this conversation, Anton. Yeah, you're very welcome. So, Anton, where I would love to start with you is a bit of a short and sweet quote. And you said, "I walk barefoot with a purpose." And the reason why I want to start here is I just loved it. It just feels like a sentence that has so much power and conviction. And it made me kind of wonder, has your life always been lived with such purpose?
It's definitely developed more recently, as in the purpose that I'm living right now is definitely from recent times. I've had a long time where I was living without purpose, which was like mentally the biggest struggle of my life. But funny enough, with going through the process of speaking about what I'm doing, writing down stories for books and presentations, I found out more about my childhood and all the time in between and how I have always had these little purpose, little moments. So I'm discovering now I've always lived with a little bit more of a purpose, a little bit more of awareness. But it was the time where I was without purpose when I left the army and came to Australia, that kind of led to what I'm doing right now and living with full intention, full purpose of, doing these barefoot walks to raise awareness.
Yeah, because obviously, as you shared, you spent, well, you actually spent 10 years in the military, which is a long time. And, you know, you hear these stories of people being in the military and having that really strong sense of like bonding between people and human connection and direction and purpose. And then sort of coming out the other side of that. I mean, I think most people are kind of like, you know, where do I go from here? Civilian life is so different. Can you talk more about that experience for you? Because I feel like, you know, particularly in Australia, I have a lot of men in my life that have been formerly in the military, and it's always been such a difficult transition period for them.
It is. I reckon that's actually the hardest thing about being in the army is leaving the army. Because like when you leave, you're super excited. You start like this whole new adventure, but you don't think about how you're about to lose your identity. Like for me, for those 10 years, people knew me as a soldier. I knew me as a soldier. And I had this very like goal and purpose driven life, like always something to work towards to. And all of a sudden that's not there. In my case, I distracted myself for quite a while. Like I came to Australia, I traveled around a bit. I was absolutely loving life, not knowing what was like coming afterwards. As soon as that settled out, that's when I realized I didn't know who I was anymore. And I definitely think that's something that within the defense forces, they need to pay a lot of attention to, because I know there's a lot of men and women that have served for a long time in the defense forces, like you said as well, go through this phase. And if you already have things you're dealing with from your army time, that kind of comes on top, where you don't know like who you are anymore, that becomes a very heavy burden to carry. So I think that's definitely a little aspect that defense forces can pay more attention to. Yes, when you come back from a mission, all the attention needs to go, how do you feel? But definitely towards like leaving the army, so like how are you preparing yourself to leave the army?
Right.
And more like the after work as well, like once you left the army, that there's something to come back to at least talk about. It was a tough time.
Is it something that like, because obviously you hear of these stories, so I assume, you know, you were somewhat aware that people go through this like form of like identity, quote unquote, crisis. Were you someone that was like aware and was like, you know, I don't think that's going to happen to me? Or were you kind of like going back into civilian life, kind of like, I wonder how this is going to manifest for me?
Yeah, as in I was, when I left the army, I couldn't be more excited. Like I was already traveling quite a lot, like whatever occasion I'll get, like we'll travel for a month or 2 months, go backpacking, traveling. And this time I sold my house. I quit the army after 10 years. I sold the cars, said goodbye to friends and family. And I was going to travel the world. I was going to travel until I find a place to fall in love with, stay there, see an opportunity. I had all these amazing ideas. So I didn't think about it at all. And I came to Australia first, fell in love straight away, never left. I traveled around here and kind of just started my life here. And with me, it was Murphy's Law. So I never thought about anything, to be honest. I had not one single worry on my mind. I was absolutely loving life. And then Murphy's Law happened. So I got everything on my plate at once. It started as in with, I reckon, 80% of mental health troubles with a breakup, which felt really heavy for me at the time because I had no family here. And all of a sudden I had the family, I had a girlfriend, she had a daughter, I had her family. And all of a sudden that fell away. And in that breakup, I was pointed at a lot of things that I didn't have yet. And I wasn't thinking about it that back then, but she made me realize where I was standing in life. That breakup made me realize where I was standing in life. And then I was basically just kind of floating around as like start of my 30s, kind of floating around, not having a single clue what I was doing. So I had the breakup, so I was heartbroken. And then when I left the Netherlands, when I sold my apartment, I couldn't care less about the whole deal of selling the apartment. I just, like, the guy who bought it, he was the luckiest guy on the planet. I told him everything that's in the house you can have. Like, I don't want anything for it. I just want to get rid of everything, which meant I was left with a very big debt because the market had dropped us up. I just wanted to get rid of it. And I didn't care about having a massive debt because I was traveling. I was like, God, that will come later. And that just came on my plate at the same time. At some point, you can't really ignore it anymore. So all of a sudden, I had this very big debt, which brought work pressure. But I was doing a job that I absolutely hated. Like, I was here on a student visa, so I was very limited in my working abilities. Working in construction was one of the few things I was able to do full time. But I was not like liking it all. I was on construction sites just eating dust. It's like, what the hell am I doing with my life? This is not what I left the Netherlands for. But I had that financial pressure, so I was kind of forced to be there. The feeling forced to be somewhere where I didn't want to be got me into, feeling anxious, feeling depressed. I started getting panic attacks. I started to cry at job sites, and I got into this very downward spiral of negative thinking about myself, of how I got myself into that place. That led to me losing friends and taking distance from friends because we weren't on the same levels anymore. They were loving life, going out like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I wasn't feeling like that at all. I was just miserable. So I started to kind of get isolated, and I started not going to jobs anymore because I just couldn't do it. Like, I didn't want to walk away from job sites. I didn't want to stand there crying like a fully adult. So I started to walk away, which led to not having an income, which led to me losing the house I was living at. So all of a sudden, I had to move back to a 6-bed dorm in a hostel because that was all I could afford. And everything combined, heartbroken, financial pressure, work, no friends, living in a 6-bed dorm. Yeah, that all kind of got too much. So I went from not having a single clue that something was wrong to everything being wrong at the same time. And all I could do at that moment was run, as in I couldn't be at work. I couldn't be in a hostel, like walls would just close in on me. So I went outside and I just started pacing up and down Manly Beach for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, because that's all I had left to do, pretty much.
Yeah, I can relate to your story in a way. I remember when I used to work in corporate, there was definitely a couple of years there where I was experiencing anxiety and depression. And there was something that I read that you wrote on your social media, and you were talking about, when you used to wake up, like literally within the second of like opening your eyes, you would just feel this full on anxiety. And I really related to you in that moment because, I've written about that as well. It's just like, it's such a scary place to live in when you don't know how to fix it and you feel out of control. And I mean, I too, I used to take days off work and, they were like sick days, quote unquote, but it was purely because I just didn't have that, mental fortitude within me to go to a space where, as you said, like the walls feel like they're closing on you. It just feels so viscerally like the place that you should not be. And what's so interesting about these stories, I find, Anton, is like the similarity with like people then turning to like getting outside, getting out in nature, and like just, going for walks or runs or just being, around like at the beach. Or I did a lot of national park stuff sort of during those times. I was chasing waterfalls, and it was like this dichotomy of like, there was this life that I felt like I was so pressured to be involved in. And as you said, it's like you felt the pressure of like, you had this financial pressure to live a life that was making you so unhappy. And then there was like another side of your life where it was like, this is where I'm naturally being pulled to. I'd love to learn more about like, what were those days like for you when you started to kind of like, I think you even said like you started walking for like 8 to 9 hours a day. Like, this isn't just kind of going for a walk down to the block to get some fresh air. Like, you really went deep into this kind of self-exploration.
Yeah. Oh, it was, for me, it was more because I felt like I had no other place to go to. So at the beginning, I didn't even feel the benefits of it. I just wanted to be away from it all. I just wanted to be outside. I just wanted to be surrounded by people, even though I didn't know them, but at least I wasn't, fully by myself. And yeah, I had zero goal, to be honest. At first, I was just going from Queenscliff to Shelley Beach and back and forth, back and forth. And over time, You would kind of bump into the same people. You might have a little chat, but that was it. Like I wasn't feeling anything really out of it until after quite a while. I got to a point where I literally just stopped myself in my tracks. It's like you can pace up and down this beach for as long as you want, but nothing is going to change about the situation. If you want the situation to change, you're going to have to change something, and no one else can do it for you. Like in the beginning, I tried to talk to as many people as possible, and you kind of hope to get something in return that just changes your life, but it doesn't happen. Like in the end, it's still you that needs to make the change. And I had a friend, one of my few friends left. I already know her for 16 years. I know her from back in the Netherlands, and she was seeing a mental slash spiritual coach at that time in Queenscliff. And she said, like, how about you just come with me and have a chat to her? And well, in that moment, coming from the army as well, if you would have told me before, like, come see someone spiritual or a mental coach or meditate or yoga, I would have told you, go hug a tree. Like that was far away from my comfort zones. But at this point, I was that rock bottom. Then I was like, I've got nothing else to do, so I might as well just go. And I made an appointment, and I told the lady, I've got just enough money for this one session, so just give me something to hold on to. That's all it is. I can't come back. I don't have finances to do this more often. And she did. She gave me a book called Mindfulness, Finding Peace in a Frantic World. And that was the first time I was connected to mindfulness and meditation. Wow. I got the meditation app with it. And yeah, I just started reading that, and that kind of ignited this little spark, this little fire. Okay, there's something new. It makes me feel slightly better. And that sparked to read more, listen to podcasts, listen to YouTube videos of other people, other men in particular, going through like similar stories. And I felt empowered by the feeling of, hey, if he went through like a similar story and he did all this, then maybe I can do the same. And I started to see things differently, so from a different perspective. So all of a sudden, the walks that I was doing was not just an aimless walk. No, I was out in fresh air. I was being active, so I was creating endorphins instead of just aimlessly walking to Shelly Beach. I was like, no, I'm going to walk here now. And once I get there, like I've achieved a little goal today. I started to just see things from a different perspective, and I see the positive little aspects of the things that I was doing. And slowly, bit by bit, and by bit, I mean some days it may have been 1 minute that I felt better, some days 5 minutes, some days I felt like a morning I was feeling good, and then back and forward. But over time, I just started to open myself more up to all these new things, to start to do yoga. That way I connected to more people again that had stories to share as well. And I just slowly crawled my way out of the very deep, dark hole I created for myself by simply reading that first book and actually just opening up my mind to something new. Yeah.
And what was that experience for you, like on a deeper level? Because my experience when I first came into mindfulness and coming from a state where I was like very much in my head, I kind of felt like I went from this like very tunnel vision. Like even if you're outside walking on the beach, like you're still in your head, like everything still feels very like foggy and chaotic. And it's kind of like you're doing the walk, but you're not necessarily focusing on anything around you, if that makes sense. There's still that feeling of disconnection that exists. And then going into mindfulness, it's kind of like the simplicity of just kind of like witnessing what is around you. And then like I feel like through that, like you begin to like breathe deeper and you breathe slower and you start feeling that sense of connection. What was it like for you?
Exactly that. I remember there was one little exercise in that was said, like, just stand still for 30 seconds. Just wherever you stand, doesn't matter where you stand, just find something like a tree or water or anything like that. And just look at the details and just appreciate it. Even if it's for 30 seconds, but just appreciate you seeing that. And that kind of triggers of you seeing more and more and more and more. And it's a practice. It's definitely not something that hits the mark straight away and you feel better. But even if it was for 30 seconds, my mind was unclouded for 30 seconds because I was fully focusing on what I was seeing instead of going through like all the things that are going through my mind. And it took me a few times to realize that. But as I realized, like, wow, for 30 seconds, my mind has just been quiet. Like I've just observed like a tree or a leaf or the ocean or a cloud passing by. As cliche as it may sound, but it was those really simple moments that made me realize my mind is quiet. Like I kind of have control over my mind right now. And that just sparked, like I said, that fire of like, hey, I want to feel more of this. What can I do to feel more of this? And I just started to extend and train more and practice more of these little mindfulness things. And I started to take it to my home as well. So even if I was in the hostel, for example, so there was so much chaos going on. There's a lot of, young kids pretty much starting probably the trip of their life. But I would still find a bit of stillness in there. So I would be sitting in the living room and just sitting there kind of observing everyone having an absolute blast. And I felt happy about others having, like, knowing, hey, they're going to start this awesome journey that might teach them a lot as well. And that just started to expand. But it was definitely for a long time. And even still now, to be honest, like I catch myself walking with my mind being super clouded because it's like it goes 100 miles an hour. But then again, you remember the practice and you slowly can take yourself out of it again.
And it sounds like, throughout this period in your life, you were really coming back to your center. And I think throughout that process, what naturally happens is when you kind of start to reconnect with yourself, you start to look forward and you start to seek direction. And obviously, from where we started at the start of this podcast, you start to seek and trying to truly understand and figure out what your purpose is. How did this kind of like play out for you during this time? How did you come into sort of coming to understand your purpose?
I think because I started to do the meditation and the yoga classes, walking into the classes, all of a sudden I kind of felt like, hey, it would be pretty cool to teach maybe. I think coming from the army as well, I kind of always felt like I would be in a position to be able to stand in front of a group and teach or just at least share something. But I never really grabbed onto anything. It was kind of just there on the background, giving me a feeling like I could potentially do that. But at first, I kind of just rolled back into the life I already had, like the construction. It's kind of stayed there because it was comfortable, it was safety, it was. So I kind of just rolled back into it. I started to enjoy it a little bit more, even though I still knew that wasn't what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. But for now, it was a good stepping stone. It really started when I really started to come out of it. So it took me about 2 years of just really hard daily work to say, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling better. I'm not just feeling better. I'm feeling better than I did before. And I wanted to treat myself. And traveling was always, for me, the one thing to go to feel like on top of the world. So I wanted to treat myself by going on a trip. And I always wanted to see Nepal, see the Himalayas, see the highest mountain in the world. And because of the army, I knew as well, we all have this innate power of we can do whatever we set our mind on. And you find that power by pushing your boundaries, by pushing your limits. That's one thing they do in the army. In the movies, it always kind of seems like they're just yelling at you and you're just running for no reason. But they're actually showing you that whenever you feel like you can't go any further, like you're physically just dead, that's when you're only at 10% of what you can actually achieve. It's only you telling yourself, I can't go any further, but your mind and your body are actually capable of doing so much more. And once you cross these limits, these boundaries, you feel this power of like, wow, if I can cross this one, what can I do next and next? To find out there are no boundaries. There are only boundaries that you put on your own thinking. And I wanted to feel that power again. So I wanted to physically and mentally challenge myself again. Okay, cool. I'm going to do Base Camp Mount Everest because that's physically and mentally challenging. I get to feel a bit of the power again. I get to travel. And because I traveled a lot before I came to Australia, I fully realized how lucky and blessed I am to be born and raised in a safe country like the Netherlands, or to be living in Australia, for example. There are so many other countries and cultures that are way less fortunate than we are. I reckon we're like the lucky 1 or 2% in the world that gets to live the life we do. So I always felt like I want to do something back for people less fortunate whenever I get the chance. And the people of Nepal living in the remote communities in the Himalayas were one of those people that needed help, especially after the earthquake. It's like, okay, I'm going to combine everything now. I'm going to do this, traveling for myself. I'm going to physically, mentally challenge myself, and I'm going to use that momentum to raise awareness and funds for the people living in these remote communities. So it couldn't be any better. I booked the trip. Then I was kind of like, okay, if you want to raise awareness and funds for the charity, you're going to have to come up with a special story, because yes, doing Base Camp Everest is challenging, but it's not out of the ordinary. Like, it's not going to generate that much more attention if you just do the walk. So I kind of thought, like, what can I do to make this a bit more special? And the walks that I was doing from Queensland to Shelley, I started to do it barefoot. The grounding, the earthing, I started to feel the benefits of that as well. And one day I was just walking back from Shelley Beach barefoot, and all of a sudden I realized, like, hey, I'm pretty sure no one's ever done base camp Mount Everest barefoot, because why would you? It's right. Uncomfortable as hell. And as soon as I said that to myself, like, uncomfortable, it was like, that's it. I'm going to be the first person ever to do base camp Everest barefoot. And that will generate that much more attention to the cause. Bingo. Like, it couldn't be more simple. And that's where my purpose was born. I did base camp Mount Everest barefoot. It was super challenging, but so rewarding to see and to feel what it's like to do something for someone else. And reaching base camp, you've got this big, massive rock kind of stating how high you're at, 5,364 meters, I think it is. And like in a movie, when I got there, like after going through the whole struggle of doing that thing barefoot, I touched the rock. And as I touched the rock, all the emotions from the last 2 years came out at the same time. So crying and laughing at the same time. And I realized I got something here. It's as simple as using my 2 bare feet to make a difference for someone else. I need to keep using this. So that's why the Barefoot Dutchman was born. That's why my purpose was born. Like, I've got something here that I can share, something as simple as that to benefit others. I'm going to keep using this. And yeah, that was the start of all the things that are developing now afterwards.
It's incredibly beautiful, and I'd love to know more about your experience in Nepal, because it's certainly one of my favorite countries. And, you know, in terms of self-exploration throughout my life, it was one country that I was truly grateful, but it was very giving. Like, I feel like I went there seeking something, and I think a lot of people do throughout Nepal and India and sort of around that area in the world. And, you know, as soon as I got there, I was like, there's so much wisdom in the air there. So I'd love to know, I know throughout your journey, you obviously came across many people, many Nepali people would have come up and spoken to you. And I know that human connection is so important to you, particularly as you shared, you've traveled a lot, and that's something that you really value, is kind of, you know, truly understanding the difference in cultures, but I think also being able to appreciate that humanness amongst everyone and that similarity amongst everyone. What was sort of some beautiful moments that you experienced during that time that I guess kind of, you know, maybe moments of grace where you were like, that was just a really beautiful moment that I'm going to hold for the rest of my life on that journey?
There's quite a few of them. One, I think, is, like you said, meeting the people. And I've been to a lot of countries, but I've never met people as friendly, like genuinely friendly as the Nepali people. Like, they just give out of the goodness out of their heart. They don't want anything in return. They want to share whatever they have. And it was absolutely amazing to see that coming from countries like Australia or the Netherlands, where that's definitely not always the case. It's so good to see that actually exists. And they were so, like I said, incredibly warm and friendly. And it was good to pretty much come to all these little towns and villages on the mountain and to receive that same welcomeness and warmth and get the good food. I think that was definitely eye-opening. But I think the coolest moments were I waited till the end of the season. Like, it was a particularly bad season on a mountain. A lot of people died. There was a lot of chaos on the mountain. So I waited for everyone to kind of clear off the mountain. I didn't want to be part of the big groups and the chaos. I waited till the end of the season, so it was like a little bit more quiet, but still, you have people everywhere, and you fly onto the mountain with this tiny little airplane. That's the only type of airplane that can actually land on the mountain. So the people you're with on that airplane, you connect with straight away. You you're all walking the same directions. You might as well just kind of hang out with each other and at the same places. So it was hard to find some time for yourself. But then I would just pick my own moments every now and then, just either, like, I would usually pick up the pace, even though it was barefoot, but I would still kind of outpace them for moments just so I could be by myself. And to stand in the Himalayas, surrounded by the highest mountains in the world by yourself, walking barefoot, after coming out of like a very deep mental health chapter and overcoming all of that, and to feel the power that you're just about to become the first person ever to do something else. Like, I would literally just stand by myself, do like a 360, like a little kid, just laughing out loud, like arms up in the sky, just absolutely, frothing of how good life is in that moment, wow, and how beautiful it is where I was standing. I think I had like 2 or 3 of those moments on the mountain where I was just by myself for quite a while, and it's just an absolute bliss of where I was standing in life and what I was doing with my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. And, I've maybe not to that caliber of being a first of someone, but I certainly can resonate with you or relate to you in the sense of having those moments. And yeah, I remember being in Nepal, and just the power of the mountains is just beautiful, and something that I've been trying to incorporate into my life, and I'd love to know how you do it, is being able to bring those moments of bliss back into everyday life. Because I feel like, and I kind of get the vibe with you in a similar way, is like, earlier in my life, I traveled a lot. I backpacked a lot. I saw on your social media, you've been to many countries around the world backpacking. And I think it kind of attracts a type of person that continues on that journey. But you're constantly, I feel like you're constantly kind of having these moments of bliss in these other countries. And then you come home and you kind of like seeking the next moment of travel to then experience those moments of bliss again. How do you go transitioning back into, I guess home for you now is on the northern beaches in Australia. Do you still find those moments of bliss when you come home? Is it something that you try and consciously practice in your life?
Well, it's very hard not to when you live on the northern beaches of
Sydney.
It's amazing.
It is.
Coming from the Netherlands as well. Like, I love the Netherlands, but this is paradise to me.
Yeah.
But of course, it's hard to put that in everyday life. Like, life is just life. It gets mundane, and it's perfectly fine as well. We don't. I think it's unhealthy to constantly every day seek that constant bliss. Like, life is just life, and it's not always going to be absolute bliss. And some days it's just, miserable, mundane. But it's fine. Like, you have to do the laundry, you have to do the dishes, you have to just do your work. Walk the dog when it rains. It's absolutely normal. But I do believe that if we really want to, if we really set our intentions every single day, there are things to be grateful for. Especially living where we live, the fact that we get to live the life we have with the luxuries we have, with the nature we have here in Australia, for example, already. Like, there are so many places to go to explore, to see. But even if it's just like for me, a walk around the block. I don't know, like, I like to go different directions, kind of intentionally get lost, because you just find these really normal streets, but you just see someone's garden, or you see like wildflowers. Like, here in Sydney, in Australia in general, like, the abundance of green and nature everywhere, it's something that we take too much for granted. It's not like that everywhere. So whenever you see it, like, it's really good to actually appreciate it, that we have the abundance of the flowers and all the wildlife that we have here. So those are little moments that you can actually practice every single day. Like, if you feel you're a bit in the mundane, if you feel a bit sluggish, that you're not like fully happy in a moment, just take yourself out for a little walk, and there's always something, if you really pay attention, that you see that you can be grateful for. And a practice that I've done, like it's a pretty basic practice, but a practice I've done for a long time and still practice every now and then is either when I wake up or before I go to sleep or even both, is just write down 3 things I'm grateful for. And it could be as simple as the fact that I can just, go to my fridge and I can have a breakfast if I want to. Or if I go to bed, that I have 4 pillows. Like, who needs 4 pillows? But I have 4 pillows to be happy about, like it can be the simplest things. Like, it doesn't have to be, I need the best job, or I need the coolest car, or the most gorgeous girlfriend. No, like, it could be the simplest things that you can actually just take a moment for and be grateful for. And the funny thing is, like, our chemicals in our body respond to it. Once we practice gratitude in that way, the chemicals in our body respond to it, and we actually start to feel what we say. So that's definitely something you can practice in every day. Like, you don't need to go abroad and go to Thailand or the Philippines to, sit on a perfect paradise little beach. We have it here as well, and it's hidden in all these little things you can see daily. We just have to kind of stand still, open our eyes, and actually intentionally look at it instead of driving past it or walking past it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the gratefuls, because it's something that I practice in my life as well. Every night before I go to bed, I do 3 gratefuls. The way in which I do it is I do 1 grateful for something about myself, 1 grateful for something about someone else, and 1 grateful for sort of nature or the world or the universe, or whatever it is for you. It could be God for some people, but kind of that practice of really being able to connect with myself, others, and then sort of the greater universe. And I think what's so important about those gratitude practices, which you clearly do in your own life, is being able to not only journal about it, but to start bringing that practice into your everyday life in the way that you go out in the world. It's not about reserving your gratitude for late at night or early morning. It's about being able to try and expand that experience throughout your life, because I do feel in my own experience, like, the people that I know that practice gratitude are certainly the more happy and fulfilled. And as you shared, it's not always the goal to be happy and fulfilled at every moment of your life. It's okay to have moments where you feel sadness or fatigue, or you're a little lost. Like, that's okay. It's the spectrum of being human. But it's about also being able to take control as much as you can and be able to, I feel like, bring the gift of gratitude into your everyday life.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's very important to know that no matter how bad your day is, no matter how bad your life circumstances are in that moment, definitely don't dismiss it. Like, it is bad. There's always something you can look at that could take you out of it, even if it's for a few seconds.
Right.
Like, I did it a lot when I was in traffic so much. I think traffic is one of the worst things for everyone when you're living in Cherished. It's absolutely nuts. But to kind of look outside your car window, instead of focusing on just traffic in front of you, look outside the car window. Just kind of look at what do you see next to you, like the people that walk by, or shop owners, or literally the water you drive by. Even in traffic, which is like just the worst moment of the day, you can find these moments. So that's like one way of putting into like your daily practice, like all these moments that happen throughout the day. Whenever you feel agitated, or whenever you feel like, yeah, you need a little upper, look around. It's funny enough, it's just everywhere. You just have to stop, stand still, and look around. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. So you obviously did this, beautiful journey and very, challenging thing in Nepal. How do you move from sort of, wanting to develop a sense of purpose that you're exploring sort of throughout Nepal, and you're creating awareness and raising funds for the sort of local people there? How do you move from that space to then deciding that you're going to walk barefoot from Cairns to Sydney for men's mental health?
Still a bit of a journey in between. I think, like, when I came back from Nepal, I felt the urge, like, I can use this. I need to do more with my life. This is like what I feel passionate about. But then still, I had so much to do in my own life to kind of get myself sorted, because I only just got out of my mental health chapter. So I came back to Australia, and it took another 2 years for me to kind of like shape my life in a better way, that I was feeling more content with my life, with the things that I already had. And that was the job in construction. That was my living situation. I needed to get through all the finances. So I did that. Like I fully just focused on, okay, but what can I do for myself to get into a better position so eventually I can help other people more, because you can't like fill from an empty cup. You need to kind of feel right yourself first. So I did the worked on it for another 2 years. And while I was doing that, I kind of started, like, I work in construction, another very masculine environment, coming out of the army, two very masculine environments. And I just heard so many guys struggle with things, to kind of joke about it, not really talk about it. When I went to North Head, which is like a national park around here as well, which is very high on the cliffs, you see these lifeline signs everywhere. And I didn't really pay attention to it at first, but then I just started to look into like, hey, what does it mean? And all of a sudden I found out like there's so many people ending their lives here on the northern beaches. And then I found out like there's so many men ending their lives here on the northern beaches. So it all kind of started to connect. I started to dive into like, what does it mean to struggle with your mental health as a man? Because I just came out of it. And for me, it was hard to kind of talk about all these things. And when I found out like what the numbers are here in Australia and worldwide with men not dealing well with their mental health and end up ending their life, it was like the numbers were going through the roof. That's when I felt like this needs to stop. Like we need to come up with something for men to feel okay to talk about whatever is going on in their lives. And I think for me, coming out of these industries myself, I kind of felt like, well, if I share something, maybe that creates a safe space for them to feel like if he can do it, then I can do it. Like men do work pretty simple when it comes to that. If we see a mate do something, and we're like, oh, he can do it, then I can do it. So I wanted to create like a platform where I could just share my own stories, to create a safe space for someone else to feel like if he can do it, then I can do it. Coming as well from the YouTube videos I watched from other men going through these similar stories. And I wanted to share, what I did for myself, for my mental health, to come out of it. And one part of that was the walk. Like I started to walk, and all of a sudden I started to feel the endorphins, fresh air, connection outside, having a goal. It's like, it kind of connected all the dots together. And I was like, I'm gonna go for a massive walk and use the momentum of the walk to create a platform to share my stories. So I looked into it. It's like, I'm just gonna walk through the most densely populated area of Australia. That way I can go through as many towns, cities, and communities as possible to speak to as many people as possible. And that was Cairns to Sydney. When I looked it up, it just seemed like a cool plan. And I found out no one had ever done a distance like that barefoot. So it became a Guinness World Record walk, which generates that much more attention to the cause. So yeah, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna go barefoot again. That's what I found out on the mountain. I need to use my 2 bare feet. I'm gonna do a Guinness World Record walk and share stories. That's what I'm gonna do. And raise money again for, in this case, mostly for Gotcha for Life.
Yeah.
So yeah, win-win, and that's pretty much how the story developed. And it was of course a bit of preparation. I had to, I couldn't work for months, so I had to find sponsors. I had to find ways of creating these social media platforms, because one thing I learned from Nepal, I didn't really use social media, so I kind of missed out on quite a lot. I know now like social media is the power of sharing the stories. To create all that, but then I was kind of like, okay, I just need to start walking. And as I start walking, everything else will kind of go, and that's how it went. I started to walk, and it just kind of, the whole bomb of attention exploded straight away. I just got lucky with that, and the story started to roll, and this absolutely life-changing, amazing journey.
Absolutely. So in the lead up, Anton, because I'm really interested always in the lead up, because I feel like, there are listeners on this podcast right now that have these, big dreams and big ideas, but there's something that, like, be it fear, that holds them back from really taking action on this idea. And I feel like you do this so well in your life. You have the idea and you see it out. in the lead up to this, you're obviously, as you said, there's deep preparation. There's a lot of work that goes into something this big. Are there moments where you falter in the lead up, where you question, should I be doing something so big? Can I do something so big? Like, did you have any element of like, who am I to be doing something so big? Like, what was your thought process sort of in the lead up to taking on this challenge?
Not for 1 second I ever doubted anything.
Wow.
Because I think because of the power, like I said before, from the army, you know, you can do whatever you set your mind on. There are no limits. It's only the limits that you put on yourself. So I kept telling myself that as well, as in, you can do whatever. Like if you want to walk from Kansas City, you walk from Kansas City. Like who's going to stop you?
Yeah.
I think when it comes to that, like we fear a lot, like, and fear stops us from doing a lot of things that we wish to do.
Absolutely.
But it's once you step out of that comfort zone, out of that comfortable bubble, you step into the fears, is when you realize there's this whole world of opportunities that lies behind those fears. You just have to take that first step. It's just about doing. Like I'm one of them. Like overthinking is like a massive thing. Like we go through so many things. I need to do this first. Like everything needs to be perfect first before I start something. Where the magic lies in, don't just start. Like it becomes perfect on the way. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's going to happen on the way. Just take that first step, and that first step is going to lead to the next step, and just go. And come out of the comfort zone. Like in the comfort zone, nothing is created. That's where you rest. That's where you watch Netflix. But nothing is created in a comfort zone. Like if you want to create something, if you want to do something better for your own life, if you have that dream that you always wanted to do, the only way of actually getting there is taking a step, and next and the next and the next. And that's the same thing what happened with this. I just went, I flew up, I took that first step, and from that step another 5 million led, and that was it.
Wow. And inevitably throughout this experience, you're meeting incredible people that have, pretty deep stories. From my understanding, you are an advocate for mental health awareness. People are inevitably going to come up to you and share their own experiences in relation to that. Which I assume at times, as open as you are, is probably, quite full on to be able to hold space for people that come into your life during something that is so challenging. I read on your social media, I think it was around day 5, you had some interesting things happen. And one story in particular was in relation to, I think you describe her as sort of like the nicest or kindest lady that you have ever met. And it was a really beautiful story. Can you share more about that on day 5?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, day 5 was pretty much everything I imagined this walk to be. So yes, like my goal is to speak to as many people as possible. It's just a massive walk and talk. And the first few days was nightmare. Like my feet were hurting so much. Like I never expected the roads to be made out of gravel, like just stone. So the first few days kind of like, what did I get myself into? Like the magnitude of the project kind of sinked in. I was missing my girlfriend that I had back then. It was like everything kind of started to sink in. It took me a few days to kind of come out of it and get into like a little bit of a flow. On day 5, I woke up in my tent next to a creek that I was actually able to swim in, which is like not always the case in North Queensland. It's full of crocodiles. So I woke up and I was able to go into the water straight away. I made myself a coffee. And I was like, wow, this is the adventure. This is the adventure that I was looking for. And as I got up, I packed my tent up and I started walking. And I got to a little town. It's not even a town. It was a few houses together. And I saw these 2 guys standing in front of the lawn. And they started to yell at me from a distance already. They recognized me. I'd been on the news quite massively. And when I left, and people recognized me from the news, and these 2 guys, and they were just overexcited to see me. And I could tell pretty on straight away, like, I'm pretty sure these guys are drunk. And as I got closer, they were like having a few beers already. And it was 8:45 in the morning.
Wow.
And when I approached and when I just started to talk to them, I kind of felt that one of the two started to apologize for being drunk that early in the morning, and he had his reasons to it. And I could see he was a little bit uncomfortable with his mate next to him. So I said, like, hey, how about you just, come for a bit of a walk with me? I'm going that direction. I'm walking back to the main road. Just come for a bit of a chat. And he did. And he was, absolutely loving life. I hardly said a word. I hardly said anything we walked for about 20 minutes. And for 20 minutes, he was finally able to unload everything that's been on his heart for so long. And the main reason why he was drunk in the morning is because he's been dealing with his mental health for 35 years already, and he had no one else to talk to. And the only thing he knew was how to numb it. He had no one supporting him. He was being mocked by everyone around, and he just didn't know what else to do. And like I said, all I was just a listening ear. I didn't say anything. I didn't tell him what to do. And by the end of the walk, he said he was lonely every now and then. It's like by the end of the walk, I was like, well, this is me. I'm going back on the road here again. And he's like, man, I wish I could just walk forever with you. I don't want to go back home. I was like, well, whenever you feel lonely again, here's my phone number. Just give me a text or a call whenever you feel the need. And just kind of left it there. And then he just gave me this immense hug. Like, I wasn't expecting that at all. He's like typical Aussie bloke, right. Like how it was. I didn't expect it at all, but it was, super beautiful. It was intense and emotional. And he walked back, and after about 30 minutes, I received a text from him saying, just from this 20-minute walk I just had with you, I already feel so much better, and I could feel the love that you were giving. For the first time in a long time, he felt love. And that was like the first time I felt like, wow, this walk is actually doing something. And I just continued my way, and I got to another little town around lunchtime, had my lunch at this petrol station, walked out the petrol station, and these two older ladies were there. And they were just about to make a donation. I had my little trolley. I was walking with this trolley, and they were about to make a donation, leave the donation, and walk off as I walked out. But yeah, I just had a chat with them. And they said, like, well, if you're around, like if you go this direction, we live around here, you can come stay with us. But I checked the map later on. I was like, nah, that's way too far. Like, I will never make that, but cool. I just went my own way anyway. And like every morning I would kind of like pinpoint where I want to end up, not as like a specific goal. If I don't make it, I don't make it, but at least I have a goal to walk towards to it. I got to the point, another creek, and I got there. There was this massive sign saying like, don't swim here, inhabited by crocodiles. So I couldn't pitch my tent. I was in a swampy area. People had told me, don't pitch your tent here. Crocodiles right now are moving from one wet place to another to find a place for the dry season. And it was getting dark. And one thing I promised was just not to walk in the dark. So I had no lights with me, not anything. And all of a sudden I'm walking in the dark in this far remote area by myself. And all I know is there's crocodiles around me moving around. So the first time I was kind of freaking out. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like I couldn't pitch my tent anywhere. And all the way in the far distance, I saw this faint little light. I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep walking towards the light, and whatever the light is, I'll just pitch the tent there, and I'll call it a day. And I already walked for about, I reckon it was 9 or 10 hours that day. I already walked more than 30 Ks barefoot. It was, I was hurting quite a lot. And as I got closer to the light, actually, as I got to the light, I saw like it's a farm, it's a house. And as I got there, this lady walked out with a little torch in her hand, and it was the lady that I met at lunch. So I just happened to end up right at her doorstep, and she saw it as a sign of God, because just 4 days before she met me, she lost her grandson to suicide. So her husband was just away to attend a funeral, and here I was like walking around spreading the word about men's mental health. So we had these beautiful chats. Like even though I was so tired, we just sat there for another few hours. She made me dinner, and we had these incredible chats. And the other lady that was there with her, she actually saved her from suicide. Wow. And they were catching up in that moment, just kind of checking in with each other how things were. So it was just this weird, like synchronicity coming together. I just ended up at a doorstep, and still to this day, she reaches out. They both do. Chris, the guy I met that day as well, like they still reach out as well, checking in on each other. And yeah, the next morning, like she gave me her caravan to sleep in. I had a mattress to sleep on. It was absolutely amazing. She made me breakfast, and we had so many good chats. And it's just the sweetest lady that, like, as in, like, I firmly believe things happen for a reason. Mm-hmm. And that day, I just like needed to end up at her doorstep to kind of comfort her with the loss of her grandson. And she's so supportive even now. Like everything I post, she's right there. Yeah.
I absolutely love it. And, you know, I think it's just so special as you share, like, this is what, you know, doing these things is all about, is, you know, really connecting with each other through adversity, and particularly in relation to mental health challenges and suicide. You know, these are very deep and raw experiences of life. And, you know, as we can see even through the stories you share, just from one day, you come across these people that have these stories of, you know, mental health challenges and suicide. And I've heard you sort of share in other podcasts, like, you know, we don't realize how common it is. We really don't, because these experiences and these stories remain unspoken, and we don't realize that, you know, a lot of us are going through very similar things. And particularly in relation to your message, you know, you have that focus of more focusing on men and men's mental health. Throughout your experience of sort of meeting these different people, what do you think in relation to men's mental health and suicide? What do you think the real issue is? Like, I know that you speak a lot about toxic masculinity, in the sense of, you know, you were in the military for 10 years, you were in construction for 5 years, you've been in these very masculine environments. Where do you see is kind of the issue that's fueling this sense of sort of mental health challenge within men's lives?
We're being raised, being taught that showing emotion is a weakness. Don't cry, man up. Right. That's just ingrained in almost every man. So we're being trained throughout our life to shut off our emotions. We need to be the solid rock. We need to be the supplier. And if we show emotions, we're weak. And we can't be weak because we're men. It's a very outdated belief system that's still just, like I said, ingrained in pretty much every single man you meet. And that's a perspective that needs to change. I think that belief system comes from, let's say, the First and Second World War, where we had no other options than to be tough and resilient and shut off our emotions to survive. But that's not the case anymore. And we have to deal with so many different stresses right now and pressures. But still, men don't feel the comfort that they can speak up about it. They feel like they need to keep it to themselves, because if they don't, they're being seen as weak and they can't function in society that way. So that's the biggest downfall with us men, is we don't feel comfortable and safe enough to speak up. I
mean, you're so passionate about vulnerability and sharing your story, and you're literally like living what you preach. And I know that you're a fan of Brené Brown. I've seen your quotes on your social media, and, you know, I absolutely adore her. And one of the most significant things that I've learned from her is, you know, we can show up in our life with, you know, this vulnerability and this courage and this truth in what we're sharing. But if we do not have a safe space in which for someone to receive that, it can be a bit of a different experience for people. As a man yourself that advocates for men's mental health and leaning into that vulnerability, what is your perspective as a man in creating a safe space? Like, what does that look like to you?
Talk to each other. So from men to men, if we share our own story, that creates a safe space for someone else to feel safe enough to share their story. And it's funny, because once we start doing it, it happens straight away. If I share what happened to me on my week that I feel sad about or annoyed or angry, another friend, another man will share that story without even thinking about it. So all we have to do is show up to each other and show that we're there for each other. So even just speak it out, say like, hey mate, how are you doing? And not just not just ending with that question, but back up the question as in, I kind of noticed that you've been acting a little bit differently lately. Is there something going on in your life? And actually start initiating conversation and just show other men or people in general that you're there. You don't even have to have the perfect answers. You don't need to have a conversation straight away. But for someone else to feel like, hey, this person has just said like they're there for me, could already make someone else feel appreciated, not alone, and safe enough to share. But the biggest strength is sharing your own story. If you feel comfortable enough to share your story, that's going to create that ripple effect. That's going to create a safe space for someone else. And then that person shares his story and feels, can share again his story or create a safe space for the next person, the next. So that way, it's just going to grow and grow and grow. But it's up to us men to show other men it's completely fine to have and show emotions. We're born with it just like anyone else. And you're just human. Like it has nothing to do with your masculinity. You can still, drink a beer. You can still play footy. You can still work on your car. You can still have the worst dad jokes of, everyone's lives. But it's completely fine to have and show emotions and to speak up about it. And that's something we need to show each other.
And throughout walking from Cairns to Sydney barefoot, it was 163 days, which that's a long time. What kind of healing happened for you during that time?
It's funny. I think on my walk, I don't think a lot of healing for myself
interesting.
consciously has happened. I was just really getting through my days. Like my days for most of the time so challenging. I was just getting from A to B every single day, going through the pain, going through the fatigue, the tiredness and the hunger. And at the same time, holding that space for everyone I met on my way. I met more than 1,000 people on my way.
Wow.
Just going through their conversations. And it was awesome to do that. My healing and developing came after the walk. So the walk was fully focused on everyone else. And yes, I definitely, because there was times where I wouldn't see for 2 weeks. There's the Marlborough stretch, for example. I reckon it was about 2.5 weeks of absolutely nothing. Just me on the side of the highway, pushing a trolley, just bare, grass and a few trees. That was it. So I was going through like a lot of thinking about myself and where I was at back then. But still, I was just kind of focused on, okay, just take that one step in front of the other just to get to like another goal today. And that one goal today is going to lead to, another goal in the bigger picture in the end to actually finish. But my healing came from day one that I finished the walk.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a little irony in doing a 5.5 month, 3,000 kilometer barefoot walk to raise awareness for men's mental health, to eventually have to deal with my own mental health when I finished.
Yeah, it tends to happen that way. Yeah, because I know that, that the way I came across you, Anton, was I think like literally on the day that you had finished. Gus Wallen from Gotcha for Life, who I've had on the podcast, absolutely love him. He had posted something about, what you've done, you and what you've done, and the message behind what you've done. And so I had a little look on your social media, and there was a video that you had uploaded onto your story, and it was sort of walking through the door of your apartment. And I think you sort of said something along the lines of like, you're basically coming home to an empty space. And for me that didn't know you, I could really feel within you in that moment. I was like, wow, like I wonder what that feels like. Like you've been on this mission for 5.5 months, and then you sort of like go into this like, I guess like box space of an apartment, right? Like you're out in nature, you're meeting new people, you have this purpose and mission, and then it all kind of comes to an end. Like what was that like? You like the first night you get home, like you're walking through the door, like what is going through your mind as you shared, this whole thing is about men's mental health. What are the thoughts that start sort of coming to the surface after, such a big challenge has been achieved?
I was miserable. I was
Mm.
so sad. I knew that after like walking for 5.5 months, like I have a goal every single day.
Mm.
I was prepared for whenever I finish, it's going to fall away. Like I will fall into like a bit of a hole. All of a
Right.
sudden, that purpose is gone. I was mentally preparing for that. But then on the walk, my relationship ended. And of course, I had time. I had all this time by myself on the side of the highway to process it. It doesn't become reality until you're actually home. And when I came home, stuff was gone. I had imagined the finish, for her to be there as well. Like the finish was absolutely amazing, like way beyond my wildest dreams. Like I
Wow.
still can't believe how that went. Like the amount of support, everyone that was there. But then that one person that you were pretty much walking home to for so long wasn't there. And then you come home
Mm.
and it's just quiet, it's empty. We had a dog, the dog was not there. So after the finish, I saw my friends for a few beers, and I knew I was kind of just pushing, how do you say it, like waiting for me to come home. But at some point, I was like, I'm so tired. I'm just gonna grab an Uber now. I'm going home. It needs to happen. And it just hit me. It hit me like as soon as I opened up the door and I came home, it hit me to the face. I'm by myself again, and it was tough. And then literally 2 days later, I had to get my shots, and I was driving back from the hospital where I got my first shot, and I received an email from the Australian government that my visa had been denied.
Wow.
All of a sudden, I had these pretty tough pills to swallow, and yeah, there was some pretty hectic weeks, to be honest. As in, I had nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do. So all I could do was just go outside and walk to Shelly Beach and back. Of course, I had like all these friends to see. Like that was absolutely amazing. Like I hadn't seen anyone for so long, so I was able to do catch-ups. But yeah, that was pretty much my day. And then I would just go home by myself again and think, okay, how am I going to stay in this country? What am I going to do next? Then I kind of decided the only way of getting through this, like I had all these really positive things waiting for me. Like I had all these opportunities all of a sudden that were there. Like people were just throwing all these things at me, and I knew it was all going to come. And I didn't want to feel miserable when these opportunities came. So it's like I need to, I need to sit still now and actually feel everything.
Right.
So not distract myself. Don't go, don't go traveling again. Don't go find someone else to distract you. Don't go numb yourself with alcohol or anything like that, parties. Just sit still and feel everything so you can just go through it faster a little bit as well. And that's what I did. So for about a few weeks, let's say 4 or 5 weeks, of course, I was seeing my friends, and of course, I was slowly focusing, okay, what's next? But I allowed myself to hurt, and I allowed myself to go through all the emotions, and I allowed myself to put in work, like all the tools and work that I learned over the last few years. And it was just pretty awesome to see that I was in such a better headspace to be able to do that, and to put the things into practice that I've been sharing for the last few months myself again. So it was no fun at all. But I have the tools and I have the strength to go through it again and again and again, because that's life. It's going to be ups and downs. It's going to be a massive roller coaster. It's never ending, but you get better at it and you get better at it to a point where you know it's going to happen, and you just kind of brace yourself and all right, let's have it. Let's go through it. And that's kind of what happened.
What do you feel like helped you the most? Because as you shared, over the years, particularly in relation to your mission, like you're developing this toolkit of strategies that help you with your mental health. What is sort of the one thing that you kind of like really lent on during that time that seemed to help you the most?
Acceptance. Just accept the situation as it is.
Right.
Like it's not going to change. You can worry about it and feel bad about it as much as you want. It's not going to change anything about the whole situation. And as soon as you accept, it just makes it a little bit easier for you to kind of move on and to look at the things you can control. Because there's so many, we try to control everything, but we can't. There's so many things that are not in our control. And as soon as you accept that, and then it doesn't even have to be you as well in that particular situation. It could be like something completely different that person is dealing with. But just accept the situation as it is, feel it, and let it go. There's no point going back and forwards over and over it again if you can't control it. Look at the things you can control. So I started to look at the things, okay, what can I do besides that, that I have power over, that could make me feel better? And I just started to focus more on the things that I could control. So yeah, I think acceptance is a very big one.
Absolutely massive. I feel like these concepts of like, you know, profound acceptance and, you know, focusing on what you can control versus what you can't. Like most of us know these, you know, concepts, these strategies, but you know, we little do we actually practically apply them in life. But when you really have those opportunities in life to apply them, they can like seem so profound. And I think, you know, particularly in looking at like the trajectory of your life, you have had, and I know that you're writing a book, so I assume you're going over these really defining crucible moments in your life that you've had. But like anything I know about you, like these moments have served you so well in the future. Like they've given you so much purpose and mission as part of what you've been through. And I feel like, you know, it's just another layer of, you know, coming home and experiencing a breakup and having to apply these things. Like it's just a deeper level to your story that you're able to share with people and have people relate to you on that deeper level. Like I think it's, you know, there's always, you know, I do speak about grace, and I feel like even in those like times of deep adversity, and sure, when you're in the moment, it doesn't feel great, but upon reflection, I feel like there's so much that you can contribute and serve in the world because of the hardship that you have experienced.
100%. It's not always easy, and like I'm definitely not going to say as well, like it's just life is just not always. I think I said it before as well. If you feel miserable, just feel miserable. But in the end, there's always something to take out of it as well. Like, let's say with Afghanistan, I've had on 3 different occasions where my life should have been, you know, over. And I could have gone over it and over and over it of the whole situation and got myself stuck in thinking, you know, why, what, when. But in the end, the fact is, it didn't happen. I'm here. I'm in one piece. I get to live the life I do. Live your life to the fullest. Like, yes, life can be over within a second. So live it like there's no tomorrow. There's always, as cliche as it may sound, but from the negative, I reckon there's always a few really positive lessons that you can take. I think with everything, like all these things are so cliche, and we kind of take them too lightly. Once you really start putting things into practice, instead of just joking about it or just taking it lightly, but you actually put it into practice, is when you see like the cliche for like yes, they're a cliche, but they're there for a reason. They're super, super powerful, and they can actually make you feel those ways as well. And it takes practice. Sorry, it takes practice and time, but they're all true. It all works, and they're all very, very powerful.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I feel like Instagram quotes have killed self-development a bit when it comes to those important concepts. So Anton, you know, what are you focusing on now? Because, you know, are you going to continue the trajectory of setting another world record in relation to being, you know, the Barefoot Dutchman? Is that how you sort of see your life going? I know that you're writing a book. I think you are a part of a documentary. You have a lot going on. What is it that you're sort of like focusing on now?
The community here on the Northern Beaches. So I want to create a safe space here on the Northern Beaches to have gatherings of men. To like, I want to start in 2 weeks with just doing men walks. As simple as I started, let's say from Queenscliff to Shelley Beach and back. Just a moment for men to connect with other men, to have a space on their week or on their day where they can just kind of take time for themselves to chat to other men and slowly integrate topics that could be heavy on the heart, and start to build it out to, like, instead of doing just one walk, let's go to the Blue Mountains for a week and you know, connect on a deeper level and do a bit more, and start to create more of these safe spaces here on the Northern Beaches for men to open up and to feel they're not alone. There's definitely going to be more world record attempts. I mean, I've got my 2 bare feet that I can use.
Right.
I'll definitely keep using that to raise funds and awareness for different charities and organizations. There is one in my mind that I hopefully can do this year, but it kind of
Wow.
gonna have to wait and see how that develops. But again, the idea is in my head, so it's gonna happen. It's just when. Um, but mostly right now, I want to focus on getting as much training myself so I can facilitate more here in the communities to help hopefully others. And I reckon these type of chats do the magic as well. Like these type of conversations, like
Mm-hmm.
I hope at some point I can do it myself as well, because there's going to be like little gems, little bits and pieces that people can take out of it, even if it's just that one that people take out of a conversation that benefits them for their day or their week or their month or their year. Mission complete.
Yeah, I feel like, the way in which you share your story, and I know you referred to this as the ripple effect, it goes out into the community, and I know that that's so important to you. And, I really feel it from you, because I feel like, there's layers to vulnerability, and I feel like you're all in, like you're an open book. You share, like everything is like out for everyone. And even, the story of like after such an amazing achievement, and you have the highlight reel of going over the line, and there's so much community on the northern beaches is celebrating you, and it's such a phenomenal moment. But then to take yourself home and very candidly say, after this I felt miserable. Like, I admire you and honor you so much for that. I think there is so much power in being so free and being able to be like, this is me and this is my experience. And certainly in my own life, I try and lean into that. And that's where the human connection comes from. That's where the self-development comes from. That's where if people are experiencing mental health challenges, that's where the healing comes from, is just being able to be completely yourself without no shame, and being able to connect with people, because we're all experiencing, our own levels of adversity at the moment. And as you shared, it's like life will deliver you all these different challenges over our lifetime. Like, we're, by virtue of being human, like we will always have those experiences at different times in our life. And it's the power in being able to share those experiences in that moment to just make it a little bit easier when we're going through something like that.
I think now more than ever, people are dealing with their own mental health demons. I reckon every single person you're going to meet on the street or wherever you go has got some background story going on.
Mm-hmm.
So now more than ever, it's just very important to show up for each other and just to be kind. No matter what the person does to you, that person doesn't do it to you personally. That person does it because they're struggling with something. So just react with kindness. That just diffuses any situation, as hard as it sometimes may be. But that's what we need to be for each other right now. Just kind, ease, let's just all kind of relax a little bit more and treat each other.
I would add to that is to, in the mirror, like have that sense of kindness to yourself as well. I feel like a lot of us can, go out there and we're trying to serve others and forget about ourselves and what we sort of teach others. So I think it's so important amongst that is to be gentle with yourself, be kind, be compassionate, give space for whatever comes up. And that's certainly how the progress and the growth comes. But Anton, thank you so much for this, truly beautiful conversation. You're an incredible human being, and I'm excited for, what's to come this year. You've left the little space for us all to be curious. So I would definitely recommend anyone to go and follow Anton's journey. It's very powerful. As you said, you want to be involved in the community. If anyone on the northern beaches, connects with Anton, like please reach out to him. He's obviously, there of service. And yeah, I just truly honor you, Anton.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me and for creating this space for us to talk as well, for other people to tune in. So thank you for what you do.
So Anton, I have a final question for you that I ask everybody. And that is, what does it mean to you to be human?
To be truly yourself and to be of service of others. As cliche as it may sound, but there's this little pyramid of Maslow, and the top of it is to be of service to others. I don't think there's a better feeling than being that.